and I'm pregnant with what will be our first children together. Lucked out with twins, as we require IVF to conceive. It took me the rest of my childhood and the better part of my 20s to get over what happened to me. I finally was able to heal, put it past me, and now for the past 5 years or so, I'm able to go months at a time without thinking about it. I had a closed adoption. I made it clear to the adoptive parents I wanted absolutely no contact whatsoever, and I never held the baby I gave away, something I do not regret to this day. I've avoided ever having social media, partially to avoid being found. In the beginning of September, I received a phone call from a private investigator letting me know my biological daughter wanted to meet me, and had hired him to track me down. I immediately made it clear I have no interest in contacting my biological daughter, and to please leave me alone. By the end of November, I had received multiple phone calls and letters from my biological daughter, begging me to meet her. I wrote her a letter in return, telling her I'm happy she's had a great life, but that I have no interest in contact. I made it clear, I will not stop her at all from reaching out to extended family. I won't be mad if she outs me as her biological mother and pursues a relationship with my relatives. She did reach out to my brother, who immediately blocked her on Facebook. I would prefer she didn't, but I don't think it's my place to keep her from doing so. On Tuesday, she showed up at my front door while I was at work. My husband answered and immediately told her to please leave, or he would have to call the police. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to explain to her in any other way that I do not want to meet her. I also don't want to be cruel. I don't view her as my daughter, as horrible as that sounds. I do wish her the best, but I have built a life I'm finally comfortable with. I don't want her to be part of it. If there is any insight any adoptees could provide on how I could explain this to her without having to just be brutally honest and also sparing her feelings. Or birth moms who have gone through a similar thing. Update 5 days later, I ended up writing my birth daughter another letter explaining to her the circumstances of her birth, and why I do not want contact with her. I also included a few watercolors I did with my grandmother while I was pregnant with her, and an extensive packet of information regarding family medical history. I overnight FedExed it to the address I had for her. Sadly, in the late hours of last night, she showed up at my house again, this time while I was home, and pounded on my front door, screaming. My husband and I tried to ignore it, but we got a phone call from out neighbors that they would call the police if we didn't answer our door or handle the situation, and I honestly didn't want to start Christmas Eve with getting someone clearly going through the thick of it arrested. My husband spoke to her via our home Ring doorbell thing. When this did not placate her, I literally barricaded myself in our bathroom, and he went out the back door, locking it, and then around the front to speak to her. I could hear him screaming at her, unpleasant, but apparently effective, because she finally left. This morning, I received a phone call from her adoptive parents apologizing to me, that they never fully disclosed how she was conceived, and that they helped fund the private investigator, which is how she found me, hoping it would lead to a more happy reunion. What they did tell me they told her, was that she was the result of SA. What they lied to her about was that it was my parents who made me give her away, and that I always loved her, chose life, and wanted to keep her if I had been older. Those were all lies, and it seems she received a similar very religious upbringing, that I did. I ended up agreeing to speak with her on the phone, facilitated by her birth parents, if she understood that now she has to leave me alone, or I will pursue legal advice, and will not hesitate to call the police if she were to ever come to my home ever again. I was very blunt with her, because I felt that she's already been lied to 100 times. It probably would have been better to do the conversation through a therapist, but honestly I'm just happy it's over. She asked me if I loved her as her daughter the way I love the children I'm pregnant with. I told her I have love for her as a human being, but that I would not lie and say I felt like a mother to her. That she's only 5 years younger than my own husband, and that I don't love her in any maternal way, but I do love her as my sister in humanity. She asked me do I wish I had an abortion. I said that at the time, I wanted an abortion. That the trauma I felt would have been significantly reduced if I were allowed to terminate the pregnancy forced upon me by my... I also said I wouldn't go back and change what happened now, because she already exists, and I would never wish away her existence. She asked me about my faith and if I am still insert out very conservative religious background, that I guess she shares. I told her no, that I am not even a Christian. She asked me about my political beliefs and if I support killing babies. I said I am 100% pro-choice, that I am a socialist and an anti-capitalist, but that I don't think being conservative makes you a bad person, not really related, but I felt the need to say it. We talked about other things for a bit, mostly her asking me, because if I'm being honest, I don't really care to ask her anything about herself. She asked me if I forgave her birth father, and if I ever spoke to him, and if I would ever consider visiting him with her. I told her that I never will forgive him, that I don't ascribe to Christian ideas of having to forgive. When pressed further about information related to him, I told her to ask my parents for any further information, and take the time to read the second letter I wrote her. I provided her mother with contact information for my own parents. I'm hoping to close this chapter of my life. I can't imagine speaking with me gave her much peace, but I hope she's satisfied. My husband and I are now considering moving so that she can't find us again. I don't feel any better having spoken with her. If anything, I'm reassured about choosing never to see her in person. She seems like a broken person, and I hope she finds her own healing, but I do not want her as part of my life. She seems like the kind of person I wouldn't get along with, and would never respect boundaries. I get that she has so much trauma of her own, and I hope she is able to leave the religious community she belongs to, unless she's happy there. I don't feel guilty that her life wasn't everything it could have been. I do feel sympathy that she obviously has been raised in a similar toxic religious household. I'm glad this is over. I've disconnected my landline, and am changing my cell phone number. I'm going to restart therapy at the beginning of next year, and if she ever shows up at my home again, I will be calling the police. Edit. For the people asking, her biological father spent 16 years in prison. He SH'd 6 members of my family in 1 year, including myself.